Mahi nui, kia koutou katoa. E koe mai e kora mā rau rangatira mā, tēnā rā koutou. It's a pleasure to be with you here this evening. A little bit nerve-wracking, but a pleasure nonetheless. And for some of us that are used to speaking, it's still a little bit nerve-wracking. But it's really special to be in conversation with you about toi Māori and its importance. For me, toi Māori is the only art form that couldn't exist anywhere else. You know, modernism, abstract expressionism, whatever else you want to call it, that's been introduced to this whenua. But Māori art has been born of this land and of Māori people. Our artists have an amazing way of collapsing time when we think about the ideas that they bring forth, the way they include us, the way they share narratives, and the way they offer learnings and insights is timeless. And so often when we talk about time from a Māori perspective, it folds in on itself. And when I think about the artists and some of the images that we're looking at, they're doing the same thing. We often get caught up in customary contemporary and this debate and the difference between the two, but there is no difference. That is that time in action. And our artists are merely representing their ideas and their thoughts in that moment in time that they stand. So it's something to be a curator, an artist, but also a participant in that conversation. And I suppose we all need to remember that we are part of that conversation. Māori art and the term art is often a trip in terms of thinking about our culture, because there is no delineation between the two for Māori. And often the term art gets caught up in these ideas of high and low art, good art, bad art, all those nonsenses that we've been told and taught. But really, it's an expression of who we are, no matter what it is, no matter who's doing it, whether it's your niece at the kitchen table, or Sandy Adset in his studio, or whether it's our Tohunga Whakairo from many years ago. They are telling us something about ourselves. They are telling us something that's uniquely our knowledge and our mātauranga. So when we think about that, we also locate our own journey within that. And so for me, as a young artist growing up, and an aspiring artist trying to find his feet, Māori art pretty much saved my life. I know it's a dramatic statement, and it really makes me think, oh, what does that really mean? But when you're 19, actually, when you're 17 and you leave school with two School C subjects, art and English, and you don't quite know what you want to do in the world, we all walk that journey of figuring out who we are and what we want to do. And for me as that young person, trying to figure out my feet, find my voice, find my confidence in myself, art was that pathway, and it continues to be. So it's a sacred relationship that I feel I share with my art practice that connects me to these beautiful taonga and to today. Leaving school at that young age, I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and I was really fortunate that my high school teacher, Hori Pomana, asked me to work on the school marae at James Cook High School, Te Pauhiringa Waka. And that was a real moment. I was 19 years old, still figuring out how I wanted to navigate in the world, and this opportunity to work on that house was presented. I'm going to just go back because it's not that one. Yeah, I'm going to screw with the whole process and go back. Because time is irrelevant, remember? We've already discovered that. Well, maybe it's 7 minutes counting, but nonetheless, for me, working on those houses was foundational. And it was from that experience of working on James Cook High School that I worked on Manurua Marae with Pakiriki Harrison and Peter Boyd. And that's not that either. But I must say that those experiences put me in instead to figure out what I wanted to say, to do things like today and stand in front of you and talk about my truth as a Māori person, but as an artist, and to navigate these ideas of what that means. And I suppose the other thing about working on meeting houses is that you are engaging with community every day. So you're not in an ivory tower thinking you are the I am. You are actually of the people, servicing the people and working with them. So those were foundational experiences that have shaped my life and my career. And I suppose when I think about that, those are some of the experiences I took into my own art journey when I went to art school in the end. I went to Massey University and did the Bachelor of Māori Visual Arts. And that was another learning for me and opening of my the pathways to what my art practice could represent. And so for me, art making is a really significant way of thinking about my connections to whenua, my connections to tupuna, my connections to mātauranga Māori, and to dreaming. I think one of the things about art is that it allows us to suspend the reality that we find ourselves in, and we are allowed to be immersed in another world. And again, time starts to stand still. And to me, that's one of the sacred things about being an artist, is that we get to do those things and we have a role to play. You know, when we often think about our tohunga whakairo and the art of carving, it's told to us to be sacred because those tohunga were directly channeling ngā atua, and the ideas that they were producing in those works weren't of theirs, but they were of the gods. So that put them apart under a state of tapu. But I like to think about our contemporary artists today as channeling a similar type of mātauranga, whereby it's a sacred practice. It's a sacred practice that you share with your tipuna, with your whenua, and with your own aspirations in that dream time that you create. And in a way, artists are generous because they're offering that to you. They're offering that bravely by putting it on the wall or by doing, presentations like this and telling you what they think and hearing what you think sometimes. But, the other thing about being an artist is that we don't necessarily wear one hat, and I've really come to understand that and to celebrate that in my life. I fell into curating by chance, not by design, and I curated my first exhibition in 2004 at our community art gallery in Manurua. And it was a matariki exhibition right about this time. And those learnings have just continued to the point where I've been able to work in the Auckland Art Gallery as the Māori curator and work on this really seminal moment of contemporary Māori art with this large survey show, Toi Tū, Toi Ora. And so for me, when I think about Māori art, often we're navigating the way in which it's been presented back to us. And for me, it was a way of thinking about Māori art which empowered and centred Māori knowledge. So how do we talk about being Māori in institutions that are incongruent with our own ways of thinking and seeing the world? And how do we intersect that with power and with authority? And so that was part of the challenge of doing this survey show, was to include 111 Māori artists across a span of 60, 70 years, right through to present day, but make sure that they were present and visible, and the manner of their practice wasn't diminished but enhanced. So the creation story became the way to think about our ways of being, which are universal, timeless, and actually practiced today. We hear them every time we hear a karakia. We heard them this evening when we opened this a lovely event. We heard Nico talk about it just prior. Those are our ways of seeing the world. And so for me, thinking about Toi Tū, Toi Ora, and bringing us together under that umbrella of our own creation stories and narratives and mātauranga was a unifying voice. And I was quite relieved when that sort of moment hit. But it also represented these ideas and these artists in a collective. Māori art is symptomatic of a culture, and Māori culture is about a collective. We're not about individuals. It's not about the big I am. It's actually about how we sit and stand together. And so for me, that was one of the most important things to show in this exhibition, is that A, we can occupy those spaces, and B, that we can sit ourselves along one another across generations, connected by our pursuits as artists. I suppose too, when we think about Māori art and the way in which we want to be positioned and thought of it today, we are in control of that conversation, and it's not negotiable. So for me, Toi Tu Toi Ora was that moment of seeing that clarity where we are in control of our own stories and our own destiny. And I think the irony in that is that when we are, actually everyone's embraced. The generosity of Māori is the generosity for all. So the fact that we can actually see ourselves, everyone else gets to see them as well. And we're richer for it. And it's blinking red. Okay. Just going to go through those because I've got a video to show you.
You devote so much of yourself to it, to the planning, to the shaping, to the thinking, to all that stuff, and then you work in earnest in the building to create it. To then have to make that decision to stand by your principles and your mana when we're trying to realise sovereignty, be in control of our own futures, which is what the show is aiming to do and to present. They're no longer theoretical conversations, they're actually ones that we have to practice and stand behind. You've got to stand behind what you think, not just in an expression, but you've got to walk it. It means quite simply that your voice and that your ideas get to resonate the way that you believe they should, and the way in which Tino Rangatiratanga tells us it should. And whether that's an aspiration, or whether it's made real, or even whether that can be made real in institutions like this, I think is debatable. But at the same time, the aspiration is worth holding on to. And that's what I intend to do.
Yeah, what he said. So just in closing, I'm just reflecting on, those recent political comments which talked about what's happening in our garages in South Auckland by a certain politician and got slammed and got purposely slammed. And you just need to remember that 3 of those meeting houses, well, you didn't get to see them, but 3 of those meeting houses that was in this presentation was done in a garage in South Auckland. There were no gang members in that garage, but there were creative minds. So, when we think about empowering ourselves and where we want to go and being unapologetic in 2023 about that, as long as we remain and maintain the centre of our own world and what we want that to be, then we will prosper, be empowered by that and that practice of tino rangatiratanga. Nō reira, tēnā rā koutou katoa.
Tēnā rā koutou.